I
Thank
love
you.
I love my
Oops.
relatives.
So I'm going to go ahead and record, and it should have signaled to you that I'm recording. I have several ICIS members and guests who have asked for us to record because they couldn't be with us today. So welcome, everyone. So happy that you are here. And this is a good turnout for a coffee hour. I'm very pleased with this. Wonderful. My name is Leslie Bohan. I am one of the co-chairs for the Intercultural Communication Interest section of TESOL. Josephine Prado, who is also here, you can see her there at the top. She is my co-chair. We are co-chairs together for this wonderful group. We have a very active interest section within the TESOL larger umbrella, and a new leadership team. I will point out, if you don't mind, a few of our leadership members who are here. Melanie Vanderhoven is there. She is on our leadership team. Sarah Hopkins is, Roxana Mirovnia, and Nicole McVeigh, and Andrea Lipka is there, and Daniela Silva. So thank you all. Good to see you all. And if you all don't mind, it's wonderful to have you put where you're coming from in the chat. I know that many of you are coming from around the world. We have a fantastic and very intercultural membership and leadership team. So I would like to share my screen with you. So welcome. We are going to now start our first coffee hour of this year, no, our second coffee hour of this year. And the topic is mindful teaching to teach mindfulness. Just a couple of notes before we start. So the intercultural communication interest section addresses the needs of language teachers who engage in intercultural communication. And that includes teachers from both English language speaking countries and countries whose native language is not English. And we facilitate all kinds of ways to interact: webinars, coffee hours, academic panels, Pechakucha and lightning talks. We in the lightning talks, we have emerging practices and also research within the field, newsletters, and more. So we're always happy if people are joining us for any and all of these activities. So how to join? If you're not a member already, please become a member of TESOL. And then once you're a member of TESOL, anyone can join the different interest groups by going on mytesol.org home. And then we also have several social media channels, which are listed here. So please follow us on any of these channels. So here is our agenda for today. As I mentioned to you, the coffee hour is an informal time for us to gather together and just over lunch or a cup of coffee or breakfast or dinner, depending on where you are, we talk about some topic of interest. And today's topic is mindful teaching practices. So after this welcome, we will have commentary on from our leaders. We have 3 leaders, and I will introduce them shortly. And then we will have open discussion from the rest of us, our participants. Look at all of these wonderful. I'm looking at the chat. You see that, Josie, all of these different people coming from. Wow.
I do. It's fabulous.
Costa Rica, Florida, and Romania as well. San Antonio, Austria, Columbus, Ohio, Myanmar, UAE, Alabama. Yay, Josie. Anna, Ukrainian, Azerbaijan. Anna, did you happen to see our lightning talks about Ukrainian teachers who are now teaching?
Unfortunately, this is the first time I joined you.
I have
Okay.
somehow spotted you miraculously on LinkedIn.
Wonderful.
And this is
Yay.
the first time I'm with you.
Fantastic. Well, we try to put our information out in as many channels as we can. So I'm glad to hear that the LinkedIn
It works.
good,
Indeed.
fantastic. Well, those two lightning talks about Ukrainian teachers and what they're dealing with in Ukraine are both on our YouTube channel. So you can go back and listen to those. Any of you in the audience can go back and listen to this information. So Barbara's coming from Italy, and wonderful. And Georgia, fantastic. Karen, welcome. Glad to see everyone. Okay, so I'd like to introduce our leaders. So we have three leaders, Ramin Yazdanpanya. Please correct me, Ramin, if I'm not correctly pronouncing your last name.
Leslie, that was you pronounced it very lovely.
I think you're being generous, Ramin. So he's the founder of First Full Circle Language Learning and Teaching. He holds a doctorate for his research on developing intercultural competence within English language teaching programs through focused intercultural exchanges with English language learners. He is also currently serving as a consultant to the U.S. State Department's English language programs and an EFL technical specialist with the Learning Systems Institute. And he's a teacher educator with the TESOL International Association and an instructional designer and teacher educator with the Florida Department of Education. Roger Manastropa has earned a Master of Education, Science and Education, Master of Arts in Theology, and Bachelor of Science in History. He taught history and religion for over a decade before joining the University of Richmond. Roger teaches religious studies and knowledge management courses for the School of Professional and Continuing Studies. And he is the Associate Director for Academic Skills at the University of Richmond, where he assists students individually and collectively with academic skill development. Roger also leads Mindful Mondays sessions for the entire university community every week. Terry Dolson is the Senior Associate Director of Community Engaged Learning of the Center for Civic Engagement at the University of Richmond. She earned a BA in English Literature from the College of William and Mary and an MA in English Literature from Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. Among many other professional responsibilities, Terry currently teaches a first-year seminar entitled Storytelling and Identity, through which she partners with a correctional facility in the Richmond area. And her training with Teagle Assessment Scholar Program helps her create cycles of authentic assessment in all of her programs. So we welcome and so much appreciate the three of you being with us to lead us. So I'll start just simply by sharing this quote that I found by Stephen Viola in a book called Mindful Teaching and Teaching Mindfulness that many of you might be familiar with. But here is a thought about mindfulness, mindful teaching. Mindfulness and education are beautifully interwoven. Mindfulness is about being present with and to your inner experience as well as your outer environment, including other people. When teachers are fully present, they teach better. When students are fully present, the quality of their learning is better. It's a win-win equation that can transform teaching, learning, and the educational landscape. So with that, what I would like to do is stop sharing and allow our guest speakers, no particular order, but our guest speakers to talk a little bit about mindful teaching, their practices, and any advice they may have with us. They might lead us through a brief demonstration, but I've left their program up to them. So thank you, the three of you, for being here.
You want to pick so that, we don't have to struggle?
Okay, Ramin, since you're the first on the list, do you mind starting?
No, not at all. I just got a little excited there when I saw Richmond, Virginia. I was just actually in Radford, Virginia, and so I'm my kind of alter ego is as a musician. I was there playing a concert in Radford, so I had to look up really quickly how close Richmond is. It looks like it's about 3 hours away, but Virginia's beautiful. We had a wonderful time up there, so it's good to see some Virginia folks. Right? It's Virginia is for lovers, right? So
That's right.
So yeah, it was really lovely being there. I just want to start by just saying thank you, Leslie, Josie, for organizing this and choosing this topic. I think it's something that obviously I feel very strongly about. As you read my profile, I've been able to apply mindfulness activities, exercises in my work as a facilitator of intercultural exchanges, and as well as my role as a teacher educator. And so, it's nice when you're designing courses because then you can sneak this kind of stuff in, right? And which actually turns out to be some of the most kind of favorite, right, part of the course that I've seen, and it's nothing that I kind of push, but I see that being the case, and I think it's because it's just taking the opportunity, right, to slow down a bit and to reflect and then open up some space to exchange what we do as interculturalists through intercultural exchange. But something that these mindfulness activities actually can help get in the kind of headspace for. And so it's something that I kind of merged with my intercultural work. I didn't kind of start out applying mindfulness activities. It was really during the pandemic where everyone's kind of anxiety was up, and that was a critical factor, right? Of especially with our students and just the anxiety of this global pandemic. And so I decided to bring in some mindfulness activities, things that I was doing just on my own and other areas of my life, through my own meditation practice, through my work as a musician. And I decided to kind of like merge these different aspects of my own life, together, because I saw the utility and the need for just dealing with some anxiety issues, but then also realizing how these mindfulness activities actually are a good primer for intercultural activities, right? And so I want to share my screen really quickly, if you can enable me. Thank you.
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you. You're such an enabler, Leslie. That's why I love you. I said you're such an enabler. All right, so let me share my screen here. So this is actually a slide from a previous webinar I did with ICIS, but I just wanted to show this slide here as kind of a rationale and understanding how mindfulness is effective in engaging, especially with engaging with kind of deeper reflection, as well as creating the space and the kind of the comfort level within sharing. So here's in addition to that lovely definition that Leslie provided. This is another definition that I'd like to share, just because it's just so succinct and brief. But one way we can think of mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So there are a lot of kind of key terms there that I think are important, because we pay attention, right? We tend to pay attention in different ways. And so some of us are paying attention right now, and some of us are paying attention to other things, right? As you are trying to pay attention to what I'm saying right now. And that's fine. No judgment, right? Non-judgmentally, but that's just the case. And so it's kind of like when you're focusing on your breath, it's like, when someone says, okay, breathe. Well, we're always breathing. Yes. But when you're kind of breathing intentionally, you're actually bringing your attention to breathing, right? To breathing in a certain way. So mindfulness is similar, where you're paying attention in a particular way on purpose. So it's intentional. You're trying to kind of be in the present moment and be non-judgmental. Now, the non-judgmental part actually starts with yourself, right? Because it's an internal, very personal experience. First, you practice being non-judgmental to things that are going on in your own mind, right? Things that are coming up, emotions that are coming up, things that you think you should be doing or not be doing. So just practicing being non-judgmental is just starts there, right? And that's a nice thing about mindfulness as well, is that you're not necessarily trying to like not have any thoughts. You're just observing, right? So you're practicing this kind of objective perspective on your thoughts and what's coming up, and then kind of letting those things go. And as you do this, I find that it's almost like a filtering process. You kind of like can start to relax more and more as you engage in this practice. And then you're in a space where you're just more relaxed. And if we see this chart here, this shows this shift in brainwave patterns. So generally, when we're trying to solve a problem, we're really concentrating on something. We're writing that proposal abstract, right? We're in this gamma brainwave. Okay, so problem solving, very highly concentrated. And then when we're kind of like right now, maybe we are in this beta, right? I'm explaining things to you. I have to be kind of focused, right, in what I'm saying, and that's great. Okay, it's great to be in a beta mindset. Generally, as we work throughout the day, we're in this beta mindset. With mindfulness, we're actually trying to drop into this alpha brainwave state. And once we get into this alpha brainwave state, you can think about this from going from like gamma and beta, which is almost like a flashlight, and alpha is kind of like a floodlight, right? You're seeing kind of the bigger picture of things. So this is where you're reflective, you're more rested, all right? And this also stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. So this actually, your body, your brain sends signals to your body that says, hey, you're in a safe place here. We can send some of that, that focus, that energy to other places in the brain. And this is where you can kind of start to see, okay, how are things connected? This is the ideal space where then as facilitators, we can pose a question, for example, right? And we can do a guided mindfulness exercise. So this is how I've used mindfulness is getting in that space first before I pose a question that I want my participants, whether they be students, whether they be teachers and service teachers, making sure that they're in that alpha brainwave state first, all right? So I call this inner reflection, all right? Inner communication before inter communication. And so if you're practicing to pay attention, right, to yourself, you're probably going to pay attention more to others. You're going to be in that present moment. And if you're practicing to be judgmental to yourself, that's going to be easier to do with others as well. So starting first, getting in that space first, and then engaging in intercultural communication. And so I'll just share really quickly, we can all do this together. A really easy way to do this is just through a body scan, okay? And so I'll just guide us through a kind of shorter body scan, and we can see, let's just kind of experiment here. Let's be aware of kind of how we're feeling right now. And I want you all to, if you would, if you're in a space where you can. If you're driving, you might not want to engage in this, but I would like you to just please close your eyes if you can. So let's close our eyes. I'll close my eyes as well. Okay. If you like, you can take just like a deep breath in, deep breath out. And if you're sitting, you could feel both of your feet on the ground. You can drop your shoulders and just be mindful of your body, just how you're feeling in a non-judgmental way. Just observe that. And if you'd like, you can observe kind of the sounds that are around you. Again, not casting any kind of judgment, not being irritated by anything like that. Just being aware. And then engaging in a body scan. So you can start with your feet, just feeling your feet, feeling your toes, your calves, your knees, your legs. Just relaxing your legs, moving that up to your belly, your lower back. Just taking a deep breath into your belly, relaxing just a little bit more. Moving up to your heart. If you like, you can send yourself a little love and gratitude for being here. Send a little love and gratitude to this group, our community. Coming up to your shoulders, relaxing your neck, relaxing your jaw, your arms, just making them heavy, your wrist, your hands, your fingers. Your scalp, your eyes. Taking another deep breath in and out. Just feeling your body, just being present. Again, just a little bit of gratitude for just being alive, being here. And now just observing how you feel now from when you started this webinar. Do you feel more relaxed? What thoughts kind of came up? What thoughts can you let go? And from here, as everybody comes back, you can open your eyes if you'd like to. You can write in the chat how you're feeling, if you'd like. And as you're writing that in the chat, I'll just really quickly just share some questions that I've asked students. Okay, and this one example here, this was with a group of international students, and the guided reflection questions were basically on identity, and because they were students, it was reflecting on their ancestry, where they've come from, who they are, in their personality and their kind of authenticity and kind of what they wish to become, right? So this could be a nice activity to do with students, especially at this age, as they're in this time in their lives when they're really kind of looking forward and planning their lives out, right? So it can be a good opportunity to engage in that kind of reflection. Another example of how I've used this is I mentioned with in-service teachers. And so this is something within an online course where within each module I have a reflection. And the reflection is connected to the topic that we're covering in that module. And so it provides an opportunity for in this case, the in-service teachers to kind of reflect on where they are in terms of the topic that we're covering. And what I did here, if you are building some online courses or if you're doing this in person, but this is an online course, so I recorded a similar kind of body scan, and then I followed up with some reflection questions. And in this one, it was how can you leverage and build on the strengths of your ESOL programs, your students, your teaching practice in a way that empowers, inspires, and excites your teaching practice. So this is some feedback that from this module that they provided. And as you can just see here, I'm not going to read this through, but if you just scan some of these parts here in bold, it just illustrates, how they appreciated and benefited from this activity to reflect on their practice, in this case, their teaching practice, and also to reflect on leveraging the strengths of their own strengths, but the strengths of their students and their programs as well. So yeah, I'll pause there because I really want to hear from Roger and Terry, and then we can engage in a Q&A. So I'll just pause there. Thank you, Roger.
Thanks, Ramin. And can you stop share?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Cool. Well, hello. Nice to be here with all of you. I fully and completely want to support Ramin's opening by thanking Leslie and Josie for this wonderful opportunity to connect with all of you and offer some of these amazing and incredible ways of engaging with not only the young people that we teach, but ourselves, our colleagues, our families, our lives, etc. So that's kind of the beautiful thing about mindfulness and meditation. I came to it after spending over a decade in the military. And as I was struggling through reconnecting, coming back into, I guess you could say civilized culture, back among the community, it was really challenging. It was really, really difficult for me. I have a particular form of PTSD, which is called hypervigilance. And it comes from being in high intensity situations over long periods of time. And so there's this constant seeking for the enemy who is, hunting us down, as well as seeking the enemy yourself. So as I was moving back into society, I went through years of counseling, which was fantastic. I'm a huge proponent. And mindfulness and meditation practice go hand in hand. Like they go really well with counseling. But what they really helped me do, which is going to make sense, like Ramin gave us such a beautiful introduction. Thank you for that. That was absolutely fantastic. Now you've done a lot of the heavy lifting, and I can just take it from there. And Terry can then add to the end. This is great. It allows you to begin to transform how you engage with yourself, and therefore how you engage outside of yourself as well, right? So sitting in meditation practice, right, we're reducing the outside input so we can really start to develop a relationship with ourselves. Like, I know it's probably just me, but I've heard that people talk to themselves in their heads. right? Yes, yes. Now I have about 6 or 7 conversations going on all at the same time, which just make me an overachiever. But so beginning to identify those different voices is a really key component in how we learn to understand all of the different things that affect us in our daily lives. So the beginning practice, if you noticed, Ramin took us through just connecting with our body, just feeling. How do I actually feel in this moment? Because we've been taught in the world today in civilization to ignore what the body says and does and just focus on our thoughts, just our thoughts. So by starting to connect somatically to what is happening internally, we then can start to create that space within ourselves to, number one, as he said, respond non-judgmentally, noticing over time. You see those thoughts come up. In the beginning, we just set them to the side, 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 come back to the breath, come back to whatever is happening in this moment right now, instead of ruminating about what could happen in the future, which is very frightening, or all the horrible things that have happened in the past, that then distract us from what is actually right in front of us. And when you think about the classroom, it's all about what's right in front of you, like that's where the actual learning and engagement is happening. And that goes for our entire lives. So yeah, when you first start, it's just beginning to master, all the different voices in your mind. And a lot of people think that, when they sit down to meditate, their mind should be completely silent. Yeah, that's so not a thing, like that's, no. So many people I work with, I'm actually part of the Karoo Center for Mindfulness. We train new teachers to teach mindfulness all over the United States, all over the world now. Thank you, Zoom. We love Zoom. A wonderful opportunity to get those teaching practices out. But one of the things I hear back constantly is, in my own practice, my mind is never silent. It's never quiet. It just keeps bothering me. And so we start by recognizing that's the nature of the mind, The mind is trying to sort out what's around us to keep our body safe, to keep this wonderful thing that we've been given safe and secure, so that we can keep engaging both with ourselves and with the outside world. But then the longer you sit and the more time you spend, you can start to differentiate among the voices. You can hear culture that you were, immersed in as a child before you had the ability to differentiate between what you really wanted to choose and what you really wanted to be a part of how you understand the world. And that's not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's how we learn language. It's how we learn culture. It's how we, all these really critical things that help us engage with ourselves and with the world. But it also comes with a lens that, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but mine's at least 55 years old. So it's out of date. So I have to constantly re-upgrade, to whatever's happening actually now in this moment, over and over and over again. And that non-judgmental practice, the physical self-soothing. One of the things, if anybody knows anything about living in today's world, it's very challenging because of the high levels of stress that we all engage with, and it leads to a whole series of medical issues, mental issues, like all these different challenges that we have. And after meditating, I'm over 20 years now, I've realized that I have reconditioned my body to actually being calm. Like that's kind of my natural state of being now. And my partner finds that extraordinarily frustrating, but it's really good for me, Like, yeah, she's always like, how can you be so calm? And it's like, practice, Like, yes. Oh, yeah. And in the classroom, this is critical. So, students come to me, I work, with students one-on-one workshops. I go into the classroom, do a variety of things. And I started bringing my own personal practice to work because the students were under so much stress. They were having trouble focusing, concentrating, engaging. Their fear was overpowering their classroom experience. And when you're afraid, it describes kind of the larger culture, you become very narrowly focused. If you ever watch like those nature channels where there's the big cat and it's prowling up, to find the gazelles, and it picks one off and the gazelle takes off, right? And it's running. That gazelle's not thinking, I wonder how Bill's doing this afternoon, right? I know I saw him this morning. No, right? Like all community, yeah, that's gone. It's just me, right? And so this is what happens. We get into these, we stay in these high states of stress, and the body literally stays in a just, right, that narrow focus, that narrow funnel. And it's really hard to then connect outside of ourselves. Right. So first thing is to get to know yourself. And it's such an incredible practice. And bringing non-judgment to that practice is the most powerful part, because it's about acceptance. It's about love. It's about understanding. It's about compassion for yourself. And that allows you then to begin to kind of pick and choose how you want to be. And the more we practice the ways of being, the more we are that way of being, right? So it is a wonderful and amazing long-term practice. Emerging adults have very particular, and emerging adults, that's a Jeffrey Arnett term. If you don't know him or not aware, Jeffrey Jensen Arnett did the studies. He started in the early 2000s, and he classified emerging adults as like this group roughly between like 18 and 29. It's when the prefrontal cortex is actually fully developing and coming online, right? So the prefrontal, this is the newest part of the brain, right? So it uses the most energy and it needs the most attention. It's a combination of things, but it's kind of the house of executive functioning. And so we're asking people who don't have developed executive functioning to be orderly, regulated, make life decisions, and not to stress about it, right? Yeah, because we're doing such a great job, right? Absolutely, 100%. So you can imagine this is one of the big reasons they're struggling, right? Like they have a lot going on. And there's this new age, right? Like things have changed dramatically with technology, with just with the way society has shifted. We now have this longer growing time. So, people are getting married later and later in life. It's not 16 to 20 any longer, right? It's moving beyond that. And so, historically, they would be in a place where they were already have assumed all these very, very specific duties that they would have been handed down to them culturally. And now we're saying, no, go off to school, find yourself, explore, become. And they're like, become what? Explore, like what? Like they don't have the tools to manage all these things. And so all they do is they fall into the patterns of what they know. And what they know is an education system that taught them to sit in a chair for 6 to 8 hours a day, right? That taught them how to memorize large quantities of information and not actually learn and process it, because the classroom is a fearful environment. And if you need to know the foundation of that fear, they're not allowed to go to the bathroom without permission. Right? Come on, like, yes. Yeah, I once asked my daughter, she's 19 now, but she was about 4th or 5th grade. And I was like, what are the most important things you learned in kindergarten? Like what did you really get out of that time? And she was like, oh, always raise your hand before you talk and never get out of line. I was like, I sent you to concentration camp. That's what I did. Right? Like, I was horrified. I thought she was going to say like colors and how to make friends, or, like it was nothing like that. Right? So they've been conditioned, right, to continue on their beliefs, but they're at that place where they're trying to push back against them in a way that allows them to form their own identity. And it's an amazing opportunity for them to be able to do this, but they don't have the skill set. And so mindfulness is a state of being, like Ramin was saying, right? It's a way of being in the world where you're really aware and present of what's happening, both inside and outside at the same time. And that's an amazingly powerful skill. And then once you're able to actually self-regulate that, right, by using the breath, manipulating the breath, shifting how you think and how that activates the fight or flight or freeze or fawn response, right? There's, then it becomes this powerful life skill and tool that can help you just be that much more amazing, and provide you the tools that you really need to engage in whatever situation you're coming on. My last note is, in the classroom, like Ramin said, the students, this will become a favorite part of their class. I start every class with a little bit of mindfulness, a little bit of breathing. A great anecdote is about 2 years ago, I started having them do a standing meditation. You know, they do a sitting meditation for a while and they just watch their thoughts and they come back to their breath, back to the breath, back to the breath, back to the breath. And then when I want them to be able to start to engage at the next level, I have them stand for about 4 minutes with their eyes closed, if they can. And I peek, right? Because they're going crazy. Right? Like they're fidgeting, they're looking around, they're like, their body. I mean, they're not expecting to have to do that in this place. And inevitably, we get to that place in the conversation as we're processing all of that, that they're learning how suffering actually works. Because to stand for 4 minutes, if it was, you know, for tickets to their favorite concert, they'd stand for 2 days and they wouldn't even complain. But to stand in class for 4 minutes is overwhelming. And so they understand that suffering is that second space, right? It's the second arrow. The first one is the pain of the experience. The second one is what our mind is doing with it and how it's creating that suffering, right? Based on our expectations and our conditioned responses. So it's such a powerful tool. And it really opens them up to be able to self-soothe when they're under high stress in the classroom, which then opens up the neocortex, the hippocampus come online, the anterior cingulate. Like now all of a sudden they can function, working memory, short-term memory, everything is there. Problem solving comes online. You know, I work with students in math because it's particularly challenging. And they come back to me over and over and over again. And they're like, I was there. I was on question 3 out of 5, which is wrong. Nobody should ever have 5 questions on a math test, right? You miss 1, you're in a category I've never had before, right? And they start to lose it emotionally, right? They get dysregulated. And so they stop and they close their eyes and they breathe and they self-soothe. And then they have this miracle that happens because their mind begins to work. And now they can actually do the problems. And it blows their mind. And then they're locked in. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I've got a place where I can really help them grow. So, but I will pass you on to one of my favorite people on the planet, Terry Dolson, who is an amazing instructor. And again, you heard her intro, so you already know how incredible she is. But she's going to share some more things, hopefully, about her class that she teaches, which is awesome.
Thank you, Roger. That's too kind. I want to answer a bit of a question that came up about how long does it take? And I owe it to Roger that I started down this path. And it's because he had its very welcoming, open to everyone, non-judgmental opportunity to sit in a group. So I would just say that to those of you who are new to this or considering doing different things, finding a group was really helpful for me. And I'll just say some quick things about how I apply some of these things that I learned, very much on the journey still. Also doing co-root with Roger, which I also highly recommend. My class is called Storytelling and Identity. I work in the Center for Civic Engagement. So there's a couple of ways that I started to want to use what I was learning in my class. And one of them is just that we always, I think Roger said this too, I always start the class with a mindful minute. I've gotten some pushback on that because no one's happy. It's not enough time to really be meditation. Why are you making people meditate who don't meditate? So I just do it. And like Roger said, actually students after time, if I don't do it, they will stop me and say, wait, we didn't do the mindful minute yet. So it takes some time. I've also had a student say to me, I can't lie, Terry, I thought you were a little crazy at first. I didn't know why you were doing this. So it takes some time. Particularly what we do in this class is go visit a Bon Air Correctional Center. It's a youth prison. So it's a horrible place. And we trade our stories as a way of building bridges across difference is our learning goal. But what I've learned over time is in order to do that, they really need some mindfulness practices. So that minute that they're doing every day, they come to see how that minute of checking in with the breath and calming themselves is crucial to the work that they do in the community. Even if it were a less stressful place, what I'm trying to do with community-based learning is help them experience something and observe. And in order to do that, it requires a kind of focus that is a corner of the eye kind of focus sometimes. So helping them really be present is key. So we go on to use, for the first thing that I have them notice when they're, first we start with body scans for a minute, then we move on to other things over the weeks. One of the things is they begin to notice they are telling themselves stories. And we use that as something we talk about in the class and relate to our readings, that we are constantly telling ourselves stories, that our culture gives us stories, and looking at that. When we go into the jail, what the incarcerated youth right now, they're all males, have expressed to me is they just don't want students to seem scared of them. They're dehumanized in so many ways, and they dread if these college students are going to come in and act scared and stuff. So I really work with my students on, I tell them that that's not going to help us, and we need to figure out what that's about before we go in there and do damage. So we move from those simple 1-minute things to some larger, longer body scans where they really, for me, what's worked best is having them find themselves in their body. So they practice it enough so that the first time we go in, and now it's a particularly bad time in Virginia, and we went back to the units, we go to where the guys are actually living, and it can be scary. You go through a lot of doors that clang shut. It's a very foreign kind of space for anybody. And we were standing in the hall last time, and one of the young women said to me, "I'm really scared, and I think I'm panicking." And I said, "That's normal. And let's remember, can you focus on your breath for a moment? Can you feel your feet on the floor? Can you let your hands touch each other and feel that? Be in your body and tell yourself, you're okay, you're safe." And we have, because we do mindfulness in the class, we've built this common vocabulary. We've built a set of practices that are really about finding calm and being in our body, and non-judgmentally observing to learn from our thoughts in this meta cognition kind of way. So I'll stop there so you guys can ask some questions. I'm happy to go into any of those pieces. I'm no expert, but I am a practitioner.
Wonderful. Thank you all, the three of you, so much. Yay, I'm just going to clap right here to start us off, but so much to think about. And I know we have a lot of questions, and we have about 12 minutes for that. And so Josie is going to man the chat to get us going, because I know we already have a few questions in the chat. So Josie, do you want to lead us in that?
Yes. Okay. So Nicole asked a question. Okay, now I've lost it. Nicole's question was very interesting. Here it is. All right. So she asked, how does the cultural concept of time relate to mindfulness with regard to focusing on the present moment? Which is a really thoughtful question. I'll let y'all consider that. That's just,
And I could elaborate too, if you know, it struck me because we're doing right now I teach in Costa Rica, so my students are, you know, mostly Latinos, and we were talking about the concept of time, about monochronic time and polychronic time, and how me as a person from the United States, I follow it in a linear path, and as with polychronic, and all my students agree that it's not uncommon to multitask and all this. So my question is, I understand mindfulness, I practice meditation. How does this transfer to cultures that have this kind of polychronic multitasking, upbringing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this gets to also what all of this stuff, what Terry and Roger are saying. There's so much overlap with what Roger was saying with his own cultural lens, right? So I think that that's a great place to start. There is kind of reflecting on your cultural lens. In this case, time, right? So how do you act, and how do you perceive behavior, appropriate behavior in certain situations where concepts of time can affect the expectations of behavior. One is dinner. I'm living here in Turkey now, and with my in-laws, we'll have like a 2 to 3 hour dinner, like no problem. And so part of me is like, hey, I got work I have to do, like, but and others like, hey, I'm here, and let me enjoy this time and space. It's so important for building relationships, right, with people here. So having that, like, just that one kind of reflection, saying, okay, this is what's going on here. Me being a practitioner of mindfulness, I think I'm better now at being able to like see my thoughts, right, and say, hey, this is a thought that I'm having. Why is that? And then seeing the context, right, and being able to shift my behavior and just say, relax, enjoy this situation. So I think with workshops that we do, or classes, that we do with participants, whether it be students or adults, emerging adults or adults, right? So it's I think that it's important to make those things really explicit. So one thing that I've done is actually make cards, right, role play cards, and put a behavior, right, like make a certain behavior that they have to role play, right? So that can be, we did a dinner activity before in a workshop, and everyone had a different kind of cultural expectation that they had to act out, right? So one can be, you have to serve someone that's older than you before you like start eating, right? That's one kind of like shift there of awareness that you should have. So I think that we have to make these things like really explicit first, and then engage in conversations with what other aspects that might be culturally different that you have grown up with, especially when we're working with international students. But I think that's true for most students, that we grew up with different kind of cultural behaviors, at home, especially at home. And so kind of bringing those up to the surface, that gets to what Terry was saying, was kind of like reflecting on your story, right? And how have those stories and your upbringing, for example, affected kind of how you see the world, your cultural lens. And then as Terry was saying, how can we write our own story now that we're more aware of our story, where we've come from, how that empowers us to be like, oh, we're just all these stories that we've been telling ourselves, right? Or that stories that people have been telling us. That's so empowering when you have that perspective right there, and then say, okay, well, you can apply this and write your own story, and not look at your like differences as deficits, right? But actually as strengths that you can leverage. And then when you start to look at yourself and others non-judgmentally, well, then you're a leader, because now you know how to leverage others' strengths, right? And ask them about their differences, in order to leverage their strengths. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Ramina. Oh, Roger, did you want to? I just wanted to follow up on something that you just said, Ramina, about my class and what I do with students is, I didn't mention this, but I think a very real barrier for students now is their phones. And we're all addicted to our phones. And so, as you said, Ramin, what's one of the things that I do is we talk about that up front. We're really transparent about it. And there is a part of our class which is about, what does it mean to build a community? And so we talk about the phones, and we talk about split attention, and we talk about how we don't want that during our FaceTime. So when we're in class together, this is a rare and important time. And when we're at the jail, it's even more rare. We can't take our phones in there. So we have to prepare for that. So I tie it into each of the parts of the class, but we do this mindful listening as well. And I do exercises with that. Again, they need not just to have their phones taken away, I think, but also to understand, so they can make that choice. what they can get when they're not trying to split their attention. Because this generation believes that there is such a thing as splitting your attention. It kind of is, but so what we do is we do a mindful listening of telling a story. We listen one another into story and repeat the story back to the person who just told it. And that's when the students experience, oh, I had to tune in a whole different way because I knew I was going to have to repeat that story back. And then we're able to build from that. I don't think we even realize how much we're not listening, how much our phones are driving our attention. Roger, you were going to say something.
Yeah, just to support all of that. And when so there's going to be resistance based on the cultural perspectives, the cultural understandings, but it's usually unconscious. All they know is how they feel. And so they're going to respond based on their feelings. Like, this makes me uncomfortable. That makes me comfortable. I want to do what makes me feel comfortable. Right. So part of the practice is learning to reduce the judgment so that reduces the suffering. But one of the most helpful things that I have found with students is to ask them the benefits of the practices that you're trying to get them to change. Because that helps them understand why they're doing what they're doing. It could be because it makes me feel better. It could be, and most of the time they don't realize it. They're like, well, I go to Instagram to check in. Yeah, but why? Like, how do you feel before you go to Instagram? How do you feel while you're on Instagram? How do you feel after? Like, but talking about what's the benefit of going to Instagram? What's the benefit of thinking about what you have to do this afternoon while you're supposed to be doing whatever it is that we're doing right now in this moment, right? What is the benefit of not worrying about, the fact that you're supposed to be here at 9 o'clock and you show up at 9:15 or 9:20 every day? Like, how does that benefit you? Where is that coming from? And why is it something that you continue to practice? Right. And that way it's not a bad thing. Right. We want to get rid of the good and the bad because they're all about the good and the bad. Everything is a good and a bad to it. So the more we reduce the fact that this isn't bad, this is just a different way of being that may or may not work for this particular situation. Now, all of a sudden, you have the power to engage at that deeper, more meaningful level. And I love asking questions like, if you were on a date and your date kept looking at their phone, or your date, like they were doing these odd things, would you feel ignored? Would you feel like you had a good date? Think about how you would assess that, right? And is that how you want to be on date? You want to be engaged, like all distracted and your head's everywhere, right? Like, what do you get out of it? And so then why are you coming here now? What are you trying to get out of this? And helping them really to begin to appreciate the depth and the richness of being present in this moment. So yeah, lots of good work there, but just know that you are in good company. Yeah.
I just want to add something because Leslie, you mentioned, I think you asked a question to Roger, is like, how long did it take him to get to be so calm as the default? And one thing that I wanted to mention there, and I think it's in one of the links that I posted here on the Huberman podcast, where he talks about how neuroscience research, and how you can think about this like coming back to the present moment, right? So having these kind of thoughts, not thinking about them as good or bad, but just coming back, right, to listening, or just coming back to like, oh, I'm this is distracting me, but coming back. You can think about it as like almost like lifting a weight or something, right? That coming back actually develops myelin, okay, in your brain, and that actually strengthens, so you get the ability to come back, right, to a present moment. It's kind of like working out, right? So it's that action actually, right, of coming back, that is the important part of it. It's not that you're supposed to be there all the time, but that opportunity to come back, to be kind of upset about something, but take a deep breath and come back. And with time, the time that it takes you to get there, right, it shortens. Okay, so it's not that, I'm sure Roger like gets mad at some point, right, but he's able to kind of recover more quickly, right, and come back and take a breath and not react, from that anger. So I think that's an important point, to keep in mind, is that it's a practice, and with time you get stronger and better at it.
And it's like playing any instrument.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
stops,
Yeah.
it fades.
That's
We're speaking a language, right?
so true. That's so true.
Well, all thank you so much. My goodness. This was absolutely fantastic. And bravo to all of you, the three of you, and also for the questions. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. I'm afraid our time is up. And I, for one, want to listen to this again. So I'm going to send you the link here. If you'd like to listen to this again, I feel like that we had learned so many tips and there were so many resources, which I will try to post. We will post this recording on our YouTube channel. So just to, again, thank you so much for being here. And if also just upcoming, we have another webinar the last week of June. We have a post-convention newsletter that will be on your MyTESOL account. We have a webinar in September that features Roxana Sinishin on the assessment of intercultural development in pre-service teacher education. We have a lightning talk in October and another coffee hour in November. So again, bravo to you all, and thank you so much for being with us.